I was playing really well at the rugby, and then I got a call from Mark Laycock, who was the Newcastle academy, but also like the A-team coach. Hey, we've sort of seen you playing pretty well down there. Do you fancy coming and playing against Northampton on Monday night? And this is maybe on like the Thursday. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, that'd be amazing.
Wow.
And then so that's how it sort of started for me. I really wanted this bat, but they were $500. And Dad was like, well, if you really want it, if you get half the money, I'll put up the other half. And I was 13 at the time. And just straight away asked Mum for a job, and I was like washing the dishes. I got a job delivering newspapers, and I also got a job at the after school care. So I got these 3 jobs in the first 2 weeks. And within 3 weeks after that, I had the money. At the time, I obviously didn't think much of it, but I think like there was a huge shift in me of like, actually, if you really want something and you really want to work for it, not only can you get it, but you could actually get it in quite a short space of time. I'm a big believer, like the more you give the universe, the more the universe will kind of, give back. So if you want to go and write 50 letters to a whole lot of rugby clubs to beg them to take you, like you're giving yourself a chance that 1 or 2 might write back. If you just write to one, you're probably not, setting yourself up and giving yourself the best chance there.
What happens when the career you've dedicated your whole life to comes to an end? And how do you take everything you've learned as an elite athlete and build it into something entirely new? Welcome back to the Toughest Finish Line podcast with me, Jen Doan. In this episode, I'm joined by Dan Temm, CEO of Pure Sport and former professional rugby player. Dan opens up about what it is really like stepping away from rugby, the identity shift that came with it, and how the lessons he learned on the pitch have shaped the way he now leads a thriving business dedicated to supporting athletes. We also dive into the reality of balancing ambition with performance. Dan shares what life looks like while working 70-hour weeks and how he still prioritizes training for his own endurance challenges and the habits that help him stay consistent when time is limited. Whether you're an athlete, entrepreneur, or simply someone trying to juggle goals with a busy life, this episode is packed with honest insights and practical takeaways. So let's get into it. So welcome to the podcast, Dan Temm. Dan, thank you so much for being here. I know you are a very busy man with lots of things going on, so I'm really, really grateful for your time today. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm good, thank you. I'm excited to be here. Sport is my favorite thing in the whole world. So any opportunity I get to talk about it, section myself off into a phone box like this and get to speak about something I'm passionate about, I'm happy with. So it's great to be here.
Brilliant. Thank you. And so many people will know you as the CEO of Pure Sport, a sports nutrition brand. But I'm really interested in going back to your earlier career, if that's okay, because you have come from a sporting background and you started out in the world of cricket. Was cricket always the dream, or how did you get into that?
Yeah, so I love sport as long as I can remember. Like growing up, my whole life, it was like my obsession. And I was playing anything in New Zealand. It was very common to sort of play cricket in the summer, and then when you're younger, play football. But then as you get a little bit bigger, move into playing rugby. But outside of that, I was trying to play tennis and hockey and water polo. And I think I knew from a really young age that I wanted sport to be a big part of my life, and I probably wanted to be a professional sports player. And I was actually during school, I was a better cricketer than I was rugby player. So when I finished school in New Zealand, we run a calendar year, so like January to November. That was sort of coming out of New Zealand, coming into New Zealand summer, and then would roll straight into a summer over here in Europe. So I was like, oh, well, I want to go and try and play cricket in the UK. I had an English passport. My mum was British. And it was quite common to like go and like play cricket overseas and become at clubs what's called like the overseas pro. So I
Right.
found a way to do that, sort of left New Zealand with my cricket bag and was like, great, I'm going to go over there and try and become a professional cricketer. So I got to West Yorkshire, 18 years old, had my cricket bag, and I really loved my time doing that. I didn't actually play very well in the cricket, unfortunately, but it was a great experience, especially for like British culture. Making friends at 18. Obviously, you're doing a lot of growing up. I had a lot of different jobs outside of cricket to keep me ticking over. We drank a load of pints and enjoyed ourselves and things. And then when it got to the end of that summer, I was like, oh, I wasn't ready to go home. I hadn't really seen anything in Europe. I hadn't done much traveling because I was sort of trying to play so much cricket. So I ended up playing for a local rugby team. And then that's when the decision making sort of had to start of like, oh, do I keep trying to go cricket or should I try and do something here with rugby?
I see. And yes, because you started out in the world of cricket and then it seemed like you very quickly changed into the world of rugby. And you were offered an amazing opportunity to go and play with Newcastle Falcons. How did that come about? And do you remember the call that you got to say you had a place on the Newcastle Falcons team?
Yeah, totally. So that year I went and played at a club called Old Crosslands in a place called Halifax in West Yorkshire. And I just had a really like fun, but also great season there in terms of being a young lad and but big ambitions. And I worked really hard on my fitness and other things like that. And that at the end of that season, I was like, oh, I'd really maybe like to try and make a play on being a rugby player here. It sort of seemed like that route to doing that might be a bit easier than cricket. And I then at that time wrote out to a whole lot of professional clubs saying, hey, could I come for a trial? I've just been playing here and things. But basically, because that was level 6, it was too disconnected from any of the like sort of professional teams in tier 1 and tier 2. And this was like tier 6. But most of them basically said, hey, you need to go and play in tier 3 or 4 and see how you get on then. And then, maybe we'd think about it. So I went to a club called Otley, which wasn't that far away from Halifax, and was playing there. I actually played there for 2 seasons. And in the second season, I was having a really great time. But when I'd gone there, because it wasn't a professional club, it was also, that's when my first sort of taste of business really happened. So I was working for a local businessman there, had fingers in lots of different pies. And he's a big supporter of the rugby club. So basically they said, oh, we want to get this Kiwi kid over to play. Can you find him a job? And he sort of found me a job to do something. So that was my first taste of business. And then I was playing really well at the rugby. And then I got a call from Mark Laycock, who was the Newcastle academy, but also like the A team coach. So the coach when people, the sort of second tier Newcastle team, hey, we've sort of seen you playing pretty well down there. Do you fancy coming and playing against Northampton on Monday night? And this is maybe on like the Thursday. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, that'd be amazing.
Wow.
And then so that's how it sort of started for me. And it was kind of funny because I played that game down at the ground there's called Franklin's Gardens on the Monday night. It was probably the best I'd ever played. Like, it wasn't necessarily the best I've ever played, but it was almost like the easiest game I'd ever played because you were kind of now in this environment where everybody knew what their job was and you kind of just had to do your job, whereas at club level, you're probably doing lots of jobs. But what was quite funny after the game was uh, so I got chatting to a couple of guys in Newcastle kit who I hadn't spoke to before the game, but they were wearing Newcastle kit and I didn't know who they were. And they were saying, oh, thanks for playing tonight, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what's your story? When you were able to come up and play for us, when could you come and play? And I was this naive, 20-year-old at the time, 21 years old. I was like, oh, I can come tomorrow if that's good with you guys. And the guy said to me, oh, we'll see you next week then. And it turned out anyway, that was Dean Richards, who I didn't actually really know like growing up from New Zealand, but he's a really famous, British and Irish Lions sort of legend. And when I told my uncle that, he's like, you were talking to Dean Richards and you didn't know who he was. And it was quite funny at the time. But it just kind of then snowballed from there. They sort of said, well, come up 3 days a week and we'll have a look at you. And one thing led to another. And then after about a month, I sort of ended up going up full time, which was awesome.
Wow. I mean, talk about putting yourself out there. And I think that it's so inspiring of just you just writing to loads and loads of clubs to try and get that opportunity there. Because I think sometimes people expect things to come to them, but actually you've got to put yourself out there, haven't you? You've
Yeah.
got to make the contacts.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like I actually went back and looked at those emails about a year ago just to see like which clubs I'd written to and
Wow.
how and about that. And they're just such like young naive emails. It's like, hey, like if I can just bring my boots, you don't have to give me anything. Like I'll just show up and I'll just be there, and etc. And I think like one of the things that's sort of like threaded through my whole life is just I just have this like unwavering belief that if you work at something, you can get it. And I actually did an interesting like leadership thing once, and they sort of said, "Oh, pick out defining moments in your life between like 0 and 10 years old, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, and then 30 plus." And one of the defining moments that I picked out in that was like my parents were separated, but individually both like worked so hard, and we were just, although we didn't necessarily know it at the time, we always were just like subconsciously around it. Like dad was a lawyer, he used to come home, have dinner with us, and then if it was a big case, he'd go back to the office and things. But there was this moment where I really wanted a new cricket bat, Oh, so Ricky Ponting was like the Australian cricket captain, like legendary
Yeah.
cricket player, and he
Yeah.
got this new cricket bat. And at the time, they had these big carbon fiber plates on the back. It was brand new technology. So I really wanted this bat, but they were $500, and we never really got bought anything outside of Christmas and birthdays. And well, in fact, we never did. And Dad was like, "Well, if you really want it, if you get half the money, I'll put up the other half." And I was 13 at the time, and just straight away asked mum for a job, and she was a manager of a cafe. I was like washing the dishes. I got a job delivering newspapers, and I also got a job at the after school care, looking after
Yeah.
kids while they're waiting for their parents. So I got these 3 jobs in the first 2 weeks, and within 3 weeks after that, I had the money. Back to Dad with my $250, and then we went down and we bought this bat. And I was like, I think at the time I obviously didn't think much of it, but I think like there was a huge shift in me of like, actually, if you really want something and you really want to work for it, not only can you get it, but you could actually get it in quite a short space of time if you really want to do that. And I think that's something that's then kind of threaded throughout my life. And as I said in my rise up to wanting to be a professional sports player, I was just doing it. I wanted to be the fittest. I wanted to be the first at training. I wanted to understand all the
Right.
moves and things because actually when it came, if you went and spoke to anybody I played rugby with at school, they probably would say that I couldn't have been a professional rugby player based on, like pure talent or ability.
Right.
But it's like, oh, that guy was just a bit of a mad dog when it came to working hard.
Wow. And I think that that's what I'm hearing is, you touched on it earlier how you were juggling 3 or 4 jobs at the same time whilst you were training and whilst you were working. And so when that switch came to professional rugby and you went full time, were you juggling jobs as well at the same time, or was it your whole focus just on that rugby?
Yeah, no, actually, I continued. So the businessman that I'd worked for, that was actually going quite well. And yeah, I remember at the time I was 21 years old. I was earning £18,000 at the business, plus the Otley Rugby Club were kind of covering my rent costs to live there
Uh-huh.
and stuff. So I was like, I actually think back at it now, it was like the most money I ever had. And to go up to Newcastle, they were like, "Hey, the player budget's fully allocated because this is the middle of the season. Like, we could only really pay you 10 grand a year." And I was kind of like, "Well, it doesn't matter. I'll make it work." So I ended up staying working for the business throughout the time that I went up there to play
Wow.
the rugby. Because in rugby, in professional sport, you do get quite a lot of time off, and that time off is generally because you should spend it recovering and you can't train every day, etc. So I used to jump in the car at like 6 a.m. on a Wednesday, drive back to Leeds, work in the office that day, and then drive back that night. And it's again like thinking back, didn't really think anything of it. It's like, well, I've got all this spare time. I really enjoy the job. I could do with a little bit of top up of extra money, so I'm going to do it. And one of the things that was kind of interesting, I actually did that for quite a lot. My first 3 years at Newcastle, and then the second 2 years I said, "Oh, I'm just going to fully focus on the rugby now." And actually, I ended up probably playing the worst I played in my sort of 9 or 10 year career. And I think the kind of reason for that is like sport is sport is so high pressure and it's so difficult. And um, in sport, you're worried about injuries, you're worried about your next contract, you're worried about all those kinds of things. So actually, having other things in your life to look forward to that mean that, and I kind of call it like your state of flow. Like when players look free, and they look, they play with freedom. And
Yeah.
some people find that through work, some people find that through having a family, some people find it through different, things. But for me, that thing was having a business interest outside of rugby to go home and stimulate the brain and think about.
Yeah, and I guess it kind of takes the pressure off, doesn't it? Of just, there's a bigger world outside of the rugby world, and so you're definitely a grafter, I think, is the thread coming through here. And so, what was it about the rugby that you enjoyed so much? What was it like standing as a professional rugby player and standing on that pitch? What kind of got
Yeah.
you so motivated and interested in by it?
Actually, my first day was kind of funny because I actually was always a smaller rugby player, especially in the Premiership. Like I'm sure if you saw me, but he's not small, but in terms of like I wasn't built like a house. So I always knew I was going to be smaller. So my theory when I was joining was like, I'm never going to be the biggest or the strongest, but I really want to be the fittest player. So
Right.
I actually ran to training on my first day. It was about 3 miles or something, and it was like gym 8 o'clock in the morning. Got there, did my gym session, And then I got called in by one of the coaches, a guy called Jimmy, and he's like, "Oh, I spoke to the strength and conditioning coach. He said when you got here this morning, it looked like you'd ran here." I was like, "Oh yeah, I did ran here." He's like, "Where do you live?" I was like, "Oh, I'm in Great Park over there." I was like, "It's about 3 miles." He was like, I love that you did that, but don't do that anymore." He's like, you're already too small and we need you to stop running and put some weight on." And then the Dean Richards spoke to me about it as well. It was quite funny. He was similar. He's like, "I love that you did that, but don't do that anymore." But when I remember that first day, because you got there, you're in the gym, there's like people helping you with your programming. We then went upstairs for breakfast and I was just like, this is just insane. And
Yeah.
especially in like, I think one of the, like, like I love sports so much because of I think what it could, the impact that it kind of has and the ability it has to reconnect us and
Yeah.
also the ability it has to like change lives. But one of the things I really love within that is the camaraderie of shared effort. You know, whether that's you and I going for a run together, that moment post exercise that we're sharing, where we've just done this thing and there's this euphoric moment happening, like being in an environment where that was actually happening all the time was just amazing. And like food and like kit and like all of that. So, but one of the things is like in that first 2 years, I really continued probably that work ethic that I'd had to kind of get me there, but I never really was cracking through and like getting regular first team games. I was going out on
Right.
loan a lot to like clubs to get game time and stuff like that. And I think I probably had that for the first 3 years, but probably that second 2 years at Newcastle, kind of like I said about really trying to focus on the rugby, I probably let that shift, like let that um, uh, subside a bit, and it's an interesting thing. Like I think that as humans, we probably all need like one big failure in our life, and I think that probably was mine. Because I dreamed of this thing for such a long period of time, this work ethic that had got me there to that, and then. And I know it would be weird for most to say to most people, "Oh, well, that was your dream and you did it." So I can't see how that could be your biggest failure. But not really cracking through and playing in the first team every week was something I look back on. And I think it's something that's really shaped this period of my life to be like, okay, one of our values here in the business is a real value of mine is complacency kills. And, within that, making sure that that's front of mind because especially in a startup or in anything really, when complacency creeps in, it can be a slippery slope. So I kind of look back on that period of 2 years at Newcastle there, and I then got a really cool opportunity to go and play for the England Sevens team. My mum was English, so that was really cool and a change of environment, traveling around the world and, all of that. And then I ended up, leaving Newcastle and playing a few years at other clubs in the championship, which is then when my kind of sport and business life like really started to evolve.
Right. Yeah. And when I was researching kind of your story, you've spoken about that complacency quite a bit and how it held you back within your rugby career. So what do you mean by that? And do you have regrets about that time?
Yeah, I definitely have regrets. I think one of the I think one of the difficult things that people probably don't think a lot about professional sport is like you can just be in the wrong place at the wrong time,
Right.
and we see all the time star players go to certain places and it just doesn't work out for
Mm.
want of another reason.
Yeah.
And that can be down to the game plan that the team is playing or that the coach's preference about the types of players that they like and things like that. And I guess I probably felt like there was a bit of bad timing for me, personally with the caliber of players that they had at Newcastle were in my position. There was a lot of internationals there, then Mark Wilson, Ali Hogg, and others, in and around at that time, and sort of taking the risk on the kind of like young, hungry kid who was like good at certain things, but actually wasn't so good at other things.
Right.
Um, just meant that I felt like I probably didn't get that chance. And I, I the complacency bit, I think for me, or the kind of regret is probably like letting that excuse creep in and kind of be like, oh well, I haven't been picked last week, I'm probably not going to get picked next week, so there's no point doing my extra lineouts or being extra fit or things like that. So
Right.
yeah, I definitely do have some regrets about like probably the mindset that I adopted during that period there. Um, but I don't necessarily know, if reflecting back, if I'd done that, would it have definitely meant that there was a significant change in the end
No.
result, but
Mhm.
it probably would have given me a better chance.
Yeah, and I guess, as you said, it's kind of up on the wall in your office now, and so that experience and that learning that you've taken from it has continued to shape your ongoing career.
Yeah. And
And
when I went to those other, when I left Newcastle and then was at those other clubs, I played the best I'd ever played because it's kind of like, oh, well, I felt like that was a bit of a missed chance. You know, I realized that life was bigger than rugby and I really wanted to make sure that I had interests outside of rugby, you know, going
yeah,
on to keep my brain stimulated. And yeah, I played the best I kind of ever had. So it was a good, it was a good experience, although a tough one to swallow at the time.
yeah, absolutely. And your story kind of caught my attention because you went from that sporting career and then completely switched into corporate world at is it right, the London Cashmere Company? Was that
Yeah.
the next shift? How did that come about?
Yeah. So, when I mentioned about the businessman who had fingers and pies at Otley before I went up to Newcastle, he had one of the big things that he did was he has a number of cashmere interest companies, and he also was really closely linked to a big cashmere factory in Mongolia. So then when I left Newcastle, there was an opportunity to look to start something alongside him that my now wife and I thought that looked like a really great opportunity. We wanted to found this company called the London Cashmere Company and basically take pop-up shops in all the sort of affluent pockets of London in the build
Uh-huh.
up to Christmas in order to sort of like hit that Christmas run, but obviously also the sort of winter, you know, getting cold run as well. And yeah, it was amazing. It was just such a cool experience. It was a great business. We sourced all the cashmere directly from like herders in Mongolia. We made it out there. We brought it here, and we sort of were able to do it at like really competitive retail prices because we only were open really for 3 months of the year, and it would come direct from Mongolia. There wasn't lots of middlemen and factories and all that sort of stuff in between. And it was just an amazing experience. There's like so many funny memories of that. I broke my nose one game on the Saturday, and then I had to work in the shop on the Sunday with this like big broken nose. It was in Chiswick, and the mums of Chiswick were coming in doing their Christmas shopping, and I'm in there with my broken nose and my black eyes. But it was yeah, it was great. So yeah, we founded that company, and that was the business that I ended up really getting my teeth stuck into alongside playing in the championship at that time.
Wow. I mean, it's not often that you hear about somebody who's in the professional world of sport and yet setting up businesses and alongside it and really grafting. And as you say, working in a shop on the day a day after a rugby game.
Yeah.
It's really impressive. And so your rugby career, you stepped away from that and went more into that corporate world. Why did you step kind of what happened at that point, and how difficult was that decision and stepping away from it?
Yeah, so at that time, London Cashmere was going into its third year, and it was a really I mean, great. Like we'd really grown it. It was going to do close to £1 million in sales that year, so it was like you know, phenomenal success in terms of what we believed it could be when we started it. We'd also had to transition it to being a bit more of an online business and not just the pop ups.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it was a hugely seasonal business, and something that was also like very difficult from a working capital perspective because we had to buy all the cashmere in the summer, try and sell it all in the winter. And if we were growing at the rate that it was kind of growing, the cash investment was also almost doubling every year. And it was getting to the point where it was like buying hundreds of thousands of pounds of cashmere just wasn't like feasible for us. So we probably knew that London Cashmere wasn't necessarily going to be the thing. Had been an amazing experience, but it maybe wasn't going to be the, you know, the thing that myself and my wife sort of did forever. And at that time, I was playing rugby with one of the founders of Pure Sport at Bedford, and we were chatting in the change room about our different businesses. And Pure Sport was about 10 months old at that point, and because I was kind of 3 years into the LCC journey, but also had some previous business experience, as I mentioned, I was just a little bit further down the road of like helping, and we were doing forecasts in the changing room, and you know, etc. So then him and the other founder sort of more formally asked me, "Well, do you want to join us and become a part of this? And you know, let's do it together." And at that time, alongside rugby, that was just going to be it was going to be a really great time because London Cashmere was kind of Christmas was coming up then. So that was kind of starting to quieten down, and then could really get my teeth stuck into that the following year. So we worked out a deal. I sort of joined them on that, and this was early now. That was end of 2019 and coming into early 2020. And then in March 2020 was when COVID lockdown
COVID.
happened.
Yeah.
So I still had another year and a half left on my rugby contract, but we basically were in lockdown, as you well know, for the best part of 6 months there. But what actually really happened was almost a really fortunate thing for a startup business at that time, was because we were all on furlough and we were getting 80% of our rugby salary. We had all the time in the world because there was no rugby games, we couldn't work or whatever, but we could give all that time to pure sport without needing to take any money out of the business. So it's like that's always the toughest thing in startups. It's like you want to go full time with them, but they can't afford to pay you.
Yeah.
And so we almost like bypassed that moment by being on there. And the more time we gave it, the more it grew. And when we started to come out of lockdown there, rugby sort of started to resume, but it was like no crowds. You had to stay in training groups of 6 and things. And it was just sort of like one of those decisions there. Where it's like, do we want to go back to playing rugby and maybe eke it out for another? Because I was only 28 at the time, so I probably could have played for another 5 years. Do I want to go back and maybe I was 29, go back and play for 3 or 4 more years, or was this the right time to go 2 feet into pure sport? And 2 feet into pure sport was the decision at the time, which felt like a big decision. It obviously turned out to probably be the right one, but it definitely wasn't easy.
No, and I mean, COVID had a lot of negatives, but that sounds like a real positive to come out
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
out of COVID, which we don't often hear about. And so, are there elements of the rugby that you miss now that
Yeah,
you would like to get back?
for sure. Yeah, gosh, I I love the competitiveness of sport, and you really miss that competitiveness. I think where rugby is quite unique, or rugby league, etc. Physical sports are quite unique, as they almost have that like kind of gladiatorial element to them, where
Yeah,
actually like you really enjoy the physical combativeness of the sport. But I'd say the other thing about it is like that physical combativeness that it requires really binds you really close together with the people that you play it with. Um, and you form really, it's kind of interesting because you do this thing on this pitch with these other people in your team, and it really binds you really closely together. And in that moment, or when you're at those clubs, you would do anything for those people and you
yeah,
enjoy everything that comes with that. But then afterwards, you're not necessarily always great mates. Like when
no,
you see those people again, you're like, you love seeing them and it's all that buzz and stuff, but it's not like, and it's something my wife always can't get her head around, but it's something unique in the way that kind of binds you together. So I really missed out. I missed the physical nature of rugby, and unfortunately, it's just not a sport that you can dip in and out of. And I played a couple of games since finishing, and like in one of the games, I really hurt my foot. I was on crutches. I was
no.
just like, with pure sport and the the running community stuff that we do, etc. I just can't do this anymore. So I think if I was to like pinpoint the moment that I miss, it's similar to that moment that I spoke to you before about. It's that moment post exercise, sat
Yeah,
in the changing room with a group of people. You've either just won or lost, but you've worked really hard together. And there's this thing that's happening. I think that's why I've really enjoyed some of the shift in what's happening in the running space. And we've obviously kind of been at the forefront of some of that, of how social running has become. It's almost been an individual sport that's kind of become quite team
yeah,
orientated,
yeah,
with the run clubs and training together, etc. So although you don't necessarily get the physical element of that, you still work hard. You experience that moment together post exercise. But yeah, definitely miss rugby.
yeah. It's so sad. It's like a kind of a moment in time, isn't it? That just stops still. But it's great that you're kind of within pure sport, taking elements from your rugby career, and as we said about the complacency, but also within the run clubs as well. But so. Coming on to Pure Sport then, so you're CEO of Pure Sport, a nutrition brand that's supporting so many athletes out there. Are there elements from the rugby pitch that you take into your role as CEO? And what are those?
Yeah. So, I mean, everything about my personal leadership really comes from my learnings from sport, not just in like professional
Yeah.
sport, but before that, things around teamwork, resilience. And I think there was a really defining moment for me actually, 2 years into pure sport, where I got recommended a book called World Class by Ben Fennell and Will Greenwood. And the business talks about the similarities between business and sport.
Yeah.
And when I read that book, it was like a watershed moment for me because it talked about, all of these things. It talked about feedback and how you give feedback on the pitch. And that's the same in business. And like, people need to know the score. Like, people need to know what the game plan is. People need to know what does the team structure look like, all of these kinds of things. And once I realized that business and sport were the same, it actually became a lot easier for me to like
Right.
think about and understand. Like, business is never easy. It's the most brutal thing going, but that understanding for me really happened. So yeah, I think like we talk about pure sport being a high performing sports team. We don't talk about being a business team. Whatever we say, we're a high performing sports team, and we want to operate like one.
Love
Um,
that. Yeah.
and there's like a number of things within there that are really important. Like in high performing sports teams, there's really, high standards. It's always about the team. My experience of business is like in a lot of businesses, it actually ends up being a lot about the individual. And in some businesses, individuals won't put their neck out because they don't think it's the right thing for them or maybe their career or their day or whatever. Whereas in a team, if it's like, hey, somebody's injured on the wing, I need you to go and play on the wing, that person's going to go and play on the wing,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of like those kinds of things that we really try and like cultivate in here. A lot of our values, a lot of what we believe in. I guess like my fundamental belief as a person is like I believe in the power of sport to like reconnect us as a group in a world that's becoming more and more disconnected. I believe that sport can be really special there, and I really believe in its ability to positively impact lives. And
Yeah.
we see that all the time with people coming into the brand, and maybe they've not been exercising for the last 5 years, or they've not run since school or whatever, and they get into it. It's just like the people that they become in the process. And I think that's why we're almost so drawn to running, because running's hard.
Yeah.
You barely ever enjoy a run. you know,
Yeah. True.
training for a marathon, you're like, oh my God, this is so freaking hard. Like, why am I doing this? But there's no such thing as a bad run, and like afterwards, you're
Yeah.
always like, I'm glad I did that. I showed up, I
Yeah.
put in the
It's
work. And
true.
that's like why our philosophy of for the long run is so at the nucleus of our brand, because it's not just about today or tomorrow. It's about, that journey and showing up year after year. And, we want to be that brand that supports people through products and education, but also building a community of people around each other that you kind of big each other up. And pure sport, if you take the 9 letters and actually rearrange them, it's actually an anagram for supporter. So
I didn't know that. I
yeah,
love
yeah,
that.
well, I mean, we didn't know that until this year actually. But
Really? It wasn't
but for the
planned.
no, but for the last 6 years, we've been saying it. I mean, you said it. The reason I say it is because you just said it before. Like, you feel like it's a brand that's supporting so many athletes and things, and like our brand has been built around support, and we've been touched by the universe that it's an anagram for our name.
Wow. That I mean, the chances of that without even knowing it is
Yeah.
amazing. And I think, yeah, I mean, and that's the whole point of this podcast. It's sharing those stories of people who, even if you have been through a tough time, you just putting yourself out there, even if you can't run for 5 minutes, but you gradually build it up. And I think the running world is changing so much to be so much more of a community. And I've met such inspiring people, and as you say, that feeling at the end of a run or the end of a workout, and if you've got people around you, nothing beats it, really, does it?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think one of the things I say to people about that is, uh, I think the most powerful or the best thing that anybody can learn in life is the ability to be resilient, because it's a complete nurture thing. It's not a nature thing. It's like a muscle. You can teach it. And in order to teach it, you just have to continue to do hard things.
Yeah.
So the amazing thing about running is every time you step out the door, the little devil will pop up on your shoulder about something.
Yeah.
The weather,
Yeah.
your knee being sore. Oh, I was going to do 10K. Maybe I should just do 8. And I think that the
Yeah.
amazing way that that's able to create resilience within us is every time you tell that little thing on your shoulder to go away and you push through that, next kilometer or the weather being cold, etc., you're becoming more resilient to the next time that that comes up. So when you step out tomorrow and it pops up again, it's, oh, it's cold again. It's like, yeah, but I did it last night, so I can do it tonight. And that can be applied to anything in life. You know, if I always say to people, like, if you want to become more resilient, tell me what time you get up. And it's like, I get up at 7. It's like, okay, tomorrow set your alarm for 6 and get up at 6. It's like, what do I want to do for that hour? It's like, it doesn't matter. You do whatever you want, go for a walk, whatever, but it's going to be
Yeah.
hard for you to do that. And just
Yeah.
challenge yourself every day to do something hard. And in the background, you just will become, more resilient. My favorite, we ask people on their first day here what their favorite quote is, about like something they live their life by. My favorite quote is that tough times don't last, tough people do. And I just really believe that. And sometimes when you're near the bottom of those tough times, you're like, is this ever going to end? Can we get through this? Especially in a startup business. But if you can, you carry that resilience through, I believe you can sort of overcome almost anything.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so, speaking about hard challenges,
Hmm.
and setting you yourself, have still continued to be in that, keeping yourself at that tip top condition and setting yourself some hard challenges. With training for a sub 3 marathon,
Hmm.
which you've been documenting on your YouTube channel, haven't you? How has that been going? And how do you juggle that training whilst working 70-hour weeks as a CEO of a company?
Yeah, not very well, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm trying to chase that sub 3 goal, which at 99 kilos is super ambitious. As a kind of a goal. Um, and yeah, I did 3:03 at London, which actually was I ran as well as I could have on the day. So
Right.
actually I didn't look at that and be like, oh God, I'm super disappointed. I think if it had been the perfect day, and it had been maybe 10 degrees and I'd run a little bit better in the first half or whatever, I think I maybe could have been close, but at the same time, I probably wasn't quite there yet. So I've signed up to another one at the end of the year. Hopefully that's going to be the one. My wife is praying with her fingers crossed that it's the one
I
because
bet.
doing pure sport and trying to get in 5 runs a week as you're sort of implying it's not easy. I think
No.
I think yeah, it's like uh, it just wasn't pretty, right? Like you sit down and you look at your week and it's like, right, I'm going to do these sessions here, and something happens or something goes wrong. And I mean, I probably did 70% of my runs after 8 p.m., which was just the reality of it. But I think I think it's so good for humans to do hard things. So
Mhm,
whether that's signing up to a 5K or a big walk or a half marathon, whatever that hard is for you, I think that's good, and I think it's just so stimulating to us. And I've done enough challenges now to know that actually getting the goal isn't actually the bit that's the best. Like, yes, there's probably a bit of relief within that, and
mhm.
you're happy about that. But actually, the bit I enjoyed most about training for London was running in the middle of Battersea Park at 10 p.m. at night, being like, I'm the only one out here and I'm getting this done, type thing, or just getting up on a Sunday and doing an early run because I actually wanted to spend the rest of the day with my wife and make sure that we had a nice day together. It's like that commitment to yourself, and then doing something hard. I think that mix is really magic.
Mhm. Yeah, and I guess it's when you want something so much, you find the time and find the space, don't you? But it's also about making sure that you look after yourself and don't burn out, because people can keep pushing and pushing and pushing. So, do you have strategies that you use as a CEO, as an athlete, that to prevent yourself from burning out?
Mm. Yeah. So, and when it comes to burnout, I I I don't believe in burnout if what you're doing is something you love doing.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
been my experience over the last 6 years. When the business is going really well and I'm doing something in the business that I feel like I'm adding a lot of value to, it's high energy or whatever, you can work every day of the week for 8 or 9 or 10 hours or whatever, and actually you're just buzzing about it. And when you start to feel burnout, it's through those turbulent times, or those times where things are evolving and you maybe don't know your place as much, or you're like being really stifled by decisions and things like that. So from January to April this year, I worked obscene amount of hours, did all the running with it, and it's like some of the best time of my
Yeah.
life. I was like, I was
Yeah.
high energy. I was really enjoying it. Um, the times in which I think back on myself are where I've, probably been experiencing, burnout in those, but it's been those really tough times in the business where you feel like you're not adding value or you're not doing something. So I would say that's kind of like a bit of my theory around it. And I think when I've spoken to other people about that, there's a very common trait within that, not just as someone leading a business, but someone who's, potentially feeling burnout in their job. And it's like, are you enjoying that? So, well, not really. I kind of hate it and I'm not enjoying this bit. And as humans, we fundamentally need fulfillment. We need to show up each day and know that we're giving our lives to something that is having an impact somewhere. So if you're giving 8 hours of your life a day to something you're not enjoying, like that will stack up and you will start to feel tired and burnt out and that thing's not worthwhile. So yeah, in answer to the question, like during that time, because I was enjoying work, because it was great, we've actually had a bit of a tough time at Pure Sport in May and June, like with the big drop off in the marathon training and people not buying gels and stuff.
Yeah.
It's meant that the business has actually really slowed down. So if I was doing lots of marathon training in the last 8 weeks, I probably would be really feeling the pinch of that a lot more. But I think one of the 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 biggest things that people can also develop is that like self-awareness of yourself and your own personal traits and being able to like understand those little triggers before they come in. Obviously, like running a startup is a real like putting your life under a magnifying glass and everything. I sort of say like a startup, a business is like a car and a startup's like an F1 car. It's going really
Right.
fast. It's really
Yeah.
uncomfortable. And if somebody clips one bit of the car, the whole car can flip over the side. And
Yeah.
a big business is like a Rolls Royce. You've probably got a driver. It's super comfortable. It's, the aircon's on, all that sort of stuff. So I think when you're in the F1 car, everything's under the magnifying glass because things can go wrong. Yourself as the driver, especially,
Of course.
So
Yeah.
I think it's a really great way to like truly understand self-awareness about yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, the things that are going to make you feel tired or more burnt out, and the things that are really going to stimulate you. But I'd say for anybody, trying to identify those things is a really great way to stay on top of them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Oh, Dan, thank you so much for your time today. It's
My
been so
pleasure.
inspiring hearing your story. And we always try to finish off the podcast with a bit of advice for other people, which you've given so much over the course of the interview. But if there was somebody who was potentially at a crossroads with their career, not knowing which way to go, what advice would you give them?
A crossroads in terms of they're not enjoying it or they're looking for that next challenge.
But either,
Yeah.
really. Yeah.
Yeah. So what would my advice be to them? So my general piece of advice on something like that would be that you really have to like fundamentally know the things that you enjoy doing. So, writing those things down, like really understanding them and not in like a wishy-washy way of like, I really like helping people, for example. It's like, well, what is it about that you like? Is it the reactions of the people? Is it what part of helping people? Is it coaching them? Is it doing charity
Yeah.
work? It could be a whole array of things. Like, what is it the things that you really love doing? And then how can you set your life up in a way to be working towards those things? Like, as I sort of said at the start, I fundamentally believe that we can actually have anything in life that we want, really, bar probably a few things which require like maybe athletic ability of winning a gold medal. But in the most part, nothing is actually as far away as you think. I love that Bill Gates quote about we overestimate what we can do in a year, but we underestimate what we can do in 10. And we try and think about that at Pure Sport is like, if we're thinking in 10-year blocks, how are we thinking as opposed to like, oh, we really want to do this thing this year. So if you really know what you want and you kind of, you're maybe a bit stuck on how to get there, just start biting off those little chunks. And I'm a big believer, like the more you give the universe, the more the universe will kind of, give back. So if you want to go and write 50 letters to a whole lot of rugby clubs to beg them to take you, like you're giving yourself a chance that one or two might write back. If you just write to one, you're probably not, setting yourself up and giving yourself the best chance there. So I hope that's not too much of a wishy-washy answer. But if anyone's listening and they are stuck at a crossroads, message me on LinkedIn and I'll happily give you a personal answer to your circumstance.
I love that. And how can it, what's your name on LinkedIn? Is it just Dan
Yeah.
Temm?
Yeah, just it's actually Daniel Classic. We were talking about the Daniel thing before. So it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's just I'm Daniel Temm on LinkedIn, Instagram, the YouTube channel that you mentioned. So yeah, find me there.
Amazing. Dan, thank you so much. I wish you all the best with everything, all the amazing work you're doing at Pure Sport, but also hoping to get that sub 3 marathon. I will be
Thank
following
you.
your channel and keeping everything crossed with you. But thank you so much for your time today.
Pleasure. Thank you so much, Jen.